I was wrong. I was wrong? Well, yeah. Recently I did a video titled Mandalorian Society is a Lie. And this is a video that examined the Mandalorian people and the gradual slide to chaos that characterized Mandalorian society in the last few centuries. The tradition with the Darksaber, the various clans and houses vying for power, it was all a mess. Now, I still believe that to be true, but there's been a glimmer of hope which has kind of changed my outlook for Mandalorian society in the future. In episode 4 of the 3rd season of The Mandalorian, we, along with bo-katan, finally got to see a little more about what the Children of the Watch were. Now, for the longest time, the audience, including myself and outsiders like bo-katan, viewed the Children of the Watch as an extreme cult. They don't take their helmets off, they went into exile off-world, and when Mandalore faced its greatest threat during the Great Purge, the Children of the Watch were absent. But we were all wrong about the Children of the Watch, especially me. You know, I try to be a very rational and cynical person, and that's because I naturally know that I am very emotional and trusting. It's how I kind of, balance things. And over the years, I've become really skeptical of spiritual and religious organizations, not because of their belief in the divine. I actually think that belief in such higher powers is a very beautiful thing, and I think it's kind of sad to live your life at least not believing one irrational thing. It's also pretty arrogant. I have no problem with people believing in a higher power. It's more just the human element of these religious organizations that I don't like, the structure. I've seen time and time again religion lead to the exploitation of really kind and well-meaning people who just want to do the right thing or want to find a sense of community. Now, for one reason or another, all throughout my life, I've run into religious or spiritual organizations. Some of them might even be labeled as cults. And while I personally have not adopted any of these beliefs myself, I begrudgingly accept that there are so many benefits to the practice of spirituality and religion. And there are even certain types of individuals who I believe benefit greatly from spirituality and religion and probably would not do as well without it. As I watched the recent episode of The Mandalorian basically shatter all beliefs I have about the Children of the Watch, I'm reminded of this important lesson to not be so arrogant, to not judge others through your own belief systems and experiences in life. As an only child, I do that a lot. It's one of the big negatives of being an only child if you ever happen to try to raise one. The episode starts off with me, again, thinking about how toxic the Mandalorians are as a society. For the second time in 2 episodes, a gigantic creature has almost eaten one of the Children of the Watch's foundlings. First, you have that massive crocodile snapping turtle thing at the mouth of your cave, and while all the Mandos are doing a bit of freestyle weapons training, a gigantic flying monster carries off another foundling to its nearby nest. A part of me almost thinks that the Children of the Watch purposely chose this location because, it builds character or something like regressive like that. And this is a part of my larger criticism of the Mandalorian people. They just simply seek out violence and warfare too much. It just doesn't work like that. No matter how good of a fighter you are, no matter how just your cause is, if you turn your society into one large military force, it's always going to end poorly. It seems like whenever the Mandalorian people would unite beneath a new leader, they would just start crusading until the entire galaxy turned against them. But in this case, with the Children of the Watch, whether it's their martial training or choosing a location for their base that's really dangerous, there actually is a legitimate purpose here. When you're a great empire and you're training your young to become the next generation of warriors for conquest and glory, you're essentially brainwashing a child and forcing them into a life as a soldier and conqueror that can have very detrimental effects on other people. This is a life that they might not even find appealing and rewarding when they get old enough to finally make up their mind about what they want to do in life. But the Children of the Watch are not an empire. They're not even a horde. They're barely a platoon. And while the locations they've settled in are not very glamorous and some are quite dangerous, they've always kept themselves hidden away from other sentient beings. And who's to blame them?
Normally I have to seek out remnants of you Mandalorians in your hidden hives to harvest your precious, shiny shells. Beskar's value continues to rise. I've grown quite fond of it. Give it to me now, or I will peel it off your corpse.
Yeah, the Mandalorians are being hunted down for their expensive shells as if they were some endangered animal. And unlike Death Watch, the Children of the Watch surprisingly are a very rational organization, despite being very dogmatic at the same time. It's kind of weird to have these two character traits in the same organization, actually. And you'll see that all of the Children of the Watch's decisions, whether it's, settling on that beach or training their kids at such a young age, have a reason behind them that is very easy to explain. Death Watch was always overly ambitious and foolish in what it thought it would be able to accomplish, and this is why their attempt to conquer Mandalore ends up in failure and great suffering for their people. The Children of the Watch have avoided that trap and have no desire for power as an organization. Their goals are simpler and easier to achieve. They want to just survive and preserve their culture. We often forget that, at least post-Great Purge, the Mandalorian people are no longer a great warrior race. They're actually just a bunch of refugees. They are the Mandalorian diaspora. A people without a home, without a nation to protect them and nurture them, are at risk of disappearing completely. If we take a look at the Mandalorians as a diaspora, as a people without a home, who with each generation grows smaller and smaller, the decisions the Children of the Watch have made make a lot more sense. The dogmatic approach to wearing a helmet all the time, that's to make sure members of this group are devout and willing to make a great sacrifice. The Mandalorians as a people are on the proverbial lifeboat. This is why they just can't be letting any armored-clad fool into their organization. And so this shared sacrifice of never taking your helmet off gives the group unity and builds trust. And all of this tradition is being protected and passed down by the Armorer, who is well respected by everyone in the organization. And that is important because this means the Armorer doesn't have to focus on maintaining her political power by doing things like, carrying out raids or attacking other settlements, which of course would be detrimental to this tribe. And so the Armorer can afford to be relatively neutral when it comes to Mandalorian power dynamics. She merely serves as an advisor or guide, and I think a lot of the reasons why the Children of the Watch are not as toxic as they should be or could be is because of her. The Armorer is the spiritual and moral center of this organization, and without her, things probably would have collapsed a long time ago. Take Paz Vizsla, for instance. He comes from a long line of morons and troublemakers. Ever since Tar Vizsla became the first Mandalorian Jedi and created the Darksaber, the Vizslas have been living off of all of that fame from their ancestors, and they've been working really hard to try to reclaim what they see as their birthright. Whether it's pre-Vizsla or Tar Vizsla, their pursuit of power has always led to great destruction for the Mandalorian people. And Paz Vizsla, while he's a brute, he's actually much larger than his other family members, and he even carries a Gatling gun with an oversized jetpack. And like all Vizslas, he's really ambitious. And he clearly doesn't like Din Djarin simply because Mando Dad is talented and seems to be getting the best jobs and the most attention from the Armorer, despite the fact that Paz is far more loyal to the Children of the Watch and stays at the Armorer's side during most of the story. Yet still, whenever Paz Vizsla challenges Din Djarin for the throne, he does it in the proper manner, and when he fails to defeat Din Djarin, he accepts the tradition and no longer challenges Din Djarin. And I think part of the reason why he follows all these rules is that he greatly respects the Armorer. And this respect actually comes from, surprisingly, the fact that the Armorer doesn't want power herself, and so Paz doesn't see her as competition. Paz, like everyone else, sees the Armorer as an elder, as someone who can give him advice. The taming of Paz Vizsla is more significant than you think. The Vizslas have long been a thorn in the side of the Mandalorian people in progress, yet the Children of the Watch's culture and society is perfectly crafted to keep individuals like him in check. If anything, Paz Vizsla has become a very important member of the Children of the Watch, and that is probably thanks to the systems put in place. And so turning this huge potential negative into a very positive thing is just another sign that the Armorer knows exactly what she's doing. You could almost say that she's forging these individuals into strong and decent young men and women. I mean, in a way, the Children of the Watch remind me a lot more of a after-school program than a military organization. This is not about killing your enemies, it's about nurturing the next generation, which I think is such a beautiful message. We oftentimes think of good leaders as individuals who have daring goals, big ideas, and broad dreams. Individuals who don't have a big vision for the future are discarded as not having the right character for the role. I would argue, though, that the ambition that makes people seek out leadership in the first place is also one of the reasons why a lot of leaders meet their downfall. Especially when an individual's ambition and ego blinds us from the reality of a situation. And as stated for the Children of the Watch, the situation is not good. They've expended a huge amount of lives protecting Gogurt and Din Djarin, and they really can't afford to take another huge loss like that. Ambition and ego can blind a leader better than enemy intelligence can. And had the armor been all about reinstating a Mandalore and reclaiming their home world, they probably would have fallen just like Death Watch. But instead of focusing on politics, what the armor does is very important. What she's really concerned about is the day-to-day needs for her group. And for her, the most important thing about being a Mandalorian is actually this.
Bo-katan Kryze, you have honored your house and all of Mandalore. You have done the highest honor of the creed, saving a foundling. This is the way.
The highest honor of the creed is saving a foundling. You know, the Children of the Watch are beginning to make sense to me. It's not just about preserving their culture. It's also about repopulating their people, which has suffered massacre after massacre. I mean, it's clear why the tribe went after the young foundling who was carried off by that flying monster, but remember when the entire clan came to Din Djarin's side when he rescued baby Gogurt from the Empire? As stated, they suffered heavily as a result and lost many of their numbers, saving just one individual. This says a lot about the Children of the Watch's priorities. I think this is an organization that is heavily invested and focused on the future and not necessarily as focused on the present. What is a capable leader? Well, to me, the most capable leaders are the ones who understand that the future is unpredictable and that setting huge, lofty goals that you aren't sure you can achieve is a negative thing to do. The most capable leaders actually focus on the roots of problems instead of tackling the symptoms. Take the growing problem that is social media in this world. Some people want more regulators, more policing of speech. Others want to keep things completely free and open. In my humble opinion, neither choices are really ideal. There is a third option, and that is focusing on educating children, preparing them for the many dangers that they'll face in the world. We need to teach kids about media literacy. We need to show them how communication tools work and understand the psychology behind the algorithms that drives content directly to our phones. Instead of trying to censor and control people, instead of just focusing on pure freedom and chaos, maybe the best course of action is education, to focus on the future. The Children of the Watch have really remembered a very important lesson that I think a lot of us here on Earth have forgotten. And that is understanding that at a certain point of your life, it is your responsibility, no duty, to help and protect and nurture the next generation. I mean, once essentials like food, water, shelter, at best returning as a Jedi, are taken care of, there's no better calling in life. But a lot of people have not embraced this mentality. I mean, how often do you see boomers posting on social media some picture of the 1800s? You know, back when they were sending toddlers into chimneys to clean them. Boomers love to pine for these days, even though they were never around for them, and they use these pictures to pivot towards how much they hate millennials and how, you know, self-centered and soft we are as a generation. Meanwhile, they completely forget the fact that their own parents' generation, the greatest generation, used to say exactly the same thing about them. The greatest generation was constantly bragging about how they took out Hitler and Toto, and now all these boomer kids are just smoking pot and dodging the draft. And sadly, I'm seeing us millennials do the same thing to the younger generation. It's like we just pass on this hatred and trauma and stupidity from one generation to another. Each generation is the future of humanity. And as adults, it's our job to nurture and steer the youth in the right direction. And it is completely unfair and stupid to judge a new generation by your own generation's standards. And that's all we seem to do as humans. We try to make the next generation like us when clearly the world has moved on. I mean, you guys remember what it was like to be young, to have such passion and energy, a complete lack of fear and anxiety that comes with age and experience and failure. It is our job as adults to protect the next generation, but we have to make sure we're protecting them from real threats and not just our own fears and past baggage. And that is what a lot of older generations seem to do. They try to limit younger generations instead of, you know, figure out a way to compromise with them. We should encourage them to try new things, to explore, and realize that our own discomfort to their music or entertainment is not because it's inherently evil or bad, but because we are simply getting older. And as you feel the world slip away, become more alien, it can be very frightening. But just because you're old doesn't mean you don't have a purpose. There is a great purpose that the older generations can really find a lot of value and reward in, like mentoring the next generation or helping to build our world so that it can accommodate the next generation and not just our own selfish needs. This is the greatest and most rewarding thing you can do with your life. And it takes a heavy amount of investing up front, and whether it's non-lethal darts that the foundlings use to fight each other safely, or the all-out effort the Children of the Watch give when it comes to saving their young. As long as older generations are fighting for the younger generations, I think this organization will be okay. Heck, they might even succeed in their crazy mission to repopulate their own people, although by then they might just return to their old ways. But we'll see. The Children of the Watch, when you strip away their many layers of armor and mystery, have a complex relationship with the galaxy. It's an extreme one that has a lot of explosions and blasters, but at their core, they are a positive organization. They safeguard Mandalorian culture, they have a strong moral foundation, and are also a very rational organization at the same time. They have found balance in their own unique way. For instance, during the tribe's rescue mission of the Foundling, it's discovered that the monster they're chasing is a mother and has 3 babies. After the mother was defeated and killed, the Mandalorians could have either killed the babies out of mercy or left them to fend for themselves. But instead, they take the third option, which is the most compassionate and rational and traditional one. They save the babies, taking on a huge burden of responsibility. But at the same time, they could train these monsters and turn them into mounts, giving them a huge tactical advantage on the battlefield. And this also happens to follow the Mandalorian tradition of taming large, scary animals and riding them. Everyone's happy. The die-hard Mandos, the tactical and strategic Mandos, and even the PETA-friendly Mandos. You know, for 3 seasons, I had this sense that the Mandalorian just was not really focused. Like, it didn't really understand what it was about and what it was doing. It was a good show. I mean, we all love, you know, Baby Gogurt, because who doesn't like a child being protected by a rugged hero in an armor suit? But that's a cheap trick. What I want to see is actual lessons, you know, motifs being repeated, and then kind of rewarding the audience for following these motifs all throughout the course of a show. And I think we're starting to see something develop here that is very interesting. This is going to be the revitalization of Mandalorian culture, and it's not going to be the true Mandalorians, it's not going to be the Night Owls, it's not going to be the new Mandalorians that lead it. It's going to be this really, really dogmatic cult, which I think was purposely and perfectly created for this moment in history. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.